What's up, guys? We're here again with Little Miss Sunny, BJJ Fanatics. She's already making fun of me for the way that I look. She's already complaining about work, and we haven't even started yet. It's 10 p.m., and she's just been complaining the whole day.
What did I say? I didn't say one thing.
I look homeless because I'm waiting to get in shape for ADCC. Like, my beard's all growing, and my hair's all growing, and so thanks for pointing that out before we even started. Anyways, we are here to look at guillotines. Now, we did front headlock. Obviously, front headlock is one of the 6 submission systems. But when I made the front headlock, people were asking specifically for instructionals based just around the guillotine itself. So today, the only thing we're going to focus on is guillotines and how to chain guillotines together with other moves, whether it be submissions or mostly positional play, like a failed guillotine into sumigishi, for example, failed sumigishis into guillotines. And we're going to look at guillotines from all these different, a ton of different positions, and we're going to look how to use guillotines to pass people's guards, how to chain into other moves, how to sweep people, and how to use guillotines interchangeably with both other submissions and positional play. All right, so now we're going to look at a quick overview. Obviously, we can hit guillotines from various different positions. So we're just going to give you a quick overview and layout on how we're going to go through this instructional. All right. The first thing we're going to look at is bottom close guard, where we set up guillotines in various ways from bottom close guard. Then we're going to look at bottom open guard. Then we're going to look at top open guard. When we're passing someone's guard, how do we snatch guillotines and use it either to pass or to lock guillotines. We're going to look at top half guard, and same thing, using the guillotines to either finish our partner or look to go into passes, things like that. We're going to look at locking guillotines from top side control, locking guillotines from mount, locking guillotines from the back when our partner escapes defensively. And then we're going to touch again on front headlocks. And obviously we have a full front headlock instructional, but we're going to touch again and add some details on the actual finishing mechanics of guillotines from front headlock. All right, so we're going to start in bottom position, move to top position, end up on our partner's back, and then move to front headlock and go from there. So when we're looking at guillotines, the number one thing I'm trying to accomplish when I'm trying to actually finish guillotine is crunching my partner's chin to my chest. And we're going to talk about this more as we go on. But whenever I'm looking to finish guillotines, the number one thing that I want to do is crunch my partner's chin down to her chest. Okay, the main issue you see guillotines fail, regardless of where it's from, what the position is, what kind of grip you have, what kind of guillotine you have, the main issue you see from these positions is that people will try to extend like so. Okay? What I want is to bring everything in and to crunch my partner's chin to her chest. The way that I do this, obviously we'll look at mechanics in a second, but the way that I do this is by pulling everything in, by pulling my knees into my chest, by taking my chin down towards my partner's back. So that now from here, when I go to finish, I can crunch my partner's chin into her chest. The biggest issue is that when people go to finish, they think extending and pulling on the guillotine is what's going to finish your partner. That's the exact opposite of what you're looking to do here. So the goal, whenever I'm looking to finish guillotine, is to take my partner's chin and crunch it down to her chest, like so. Okay, this is going to be great filming with this giant pile of shit hair on top of her head the whole time. This is going to be great. But when I can crunch the chin to the chest like this is what I want. No matter where I'm at, she steps over into half guard. It doesn't matter. If I have my shin across the hip, and leg thrown over, doesn't matter. Any guillotine, regardless of the guillotine, regardless of the grip, if you can crunch your partner's chin to your chest, you're going to have a much higher percentage chance of finishing your partner with the guillotine. So keep this in mind whenever you're going for guillotines. Am I crunching the chin to the chest is going to be one of your biggest questions while you're attacking your partner and trying to submit them with a guillotine. I like the hair, okay? It's great. It's awesome. It's going to be great for this DVD.
You never heard some man talks this much. It's just like, it's a woman thing. I don't know why you just keep...
I talk on camera, she talks off camera. It's just her complaining about, Michael Zenga, give me more money. This is too much work. We're here 12 a.m.
That's true.
And then she makes more money, but she already spent it, so. We're just recouping losses here. Anyways, defensive hand positions, okay? Similar to when I have my partner's back, my partner will have a primary and a secondary defensive hands. So when I have my partner's back, obviously she has the primary defensive hand, which will do all the work of stopping me from strangling her. And then she has a secondary defensive hand, which will stop my wrist from coming across, but it won't stop my elbow from coming across. Okay, so it'll do some of the work to stop me from strangling my partner, but not all of the work. Whereas the primary defensive hand stops the wrist and the elbow from coming across. It's the same kind of idea from a guillotine position, okay? So if she has her primary hand in, the primary hand will stop both my wrist from coming across and my elbow from coming across. So if she has the primary defensive hand in from here, and she has good hand fighting, good defensive hand fighting, I won't be able to strangle her from this position. If, however, she has a secondary defensive hand in place, now from here, it'll stop my wrist from coming up, but it won't stop my elbow from shooting across, okay, into guillotining positions. So she'll have the primary defensive hand in place if she's smart, and she will have the secondary defensive hand in place if she's smart. And she'll use both of these in conjunction with one another to stop me from strangling her, okay? Our goal from these positions today is mostly going to be built around using distractions to get my partner thinking about something else so I can punch my hands in for guillotines before her defensive hands even come into place, okay, using deception, all right? But there are going to be times, of course, where you're trying to go for guillotines. My partner just has those annoying defensive hands in. She has 1, 2, and now I have to find ways to creatively pummel past my partner's hands or use motion and get her hands on the floor, for example, to be able to punch my guillotines into place, all right? But most of what we're going to be doing today is figuring out creative ways to enter into guillotines by using dilemmas and trilemmas to get my partner thinking about something else, to lock the guillotine and go into finishes. And then when we have to, dealing with the primary and the secondary defensive hand to go in, break through those defensive grips, and get the finish. Tell him how you just extorted me.
Well, I told him to delete the clip that he talked bad about me and redo it. He said no. So I said, okay, so you pay me $200. And he said, okay. So we shook hands, and that's how you make money, girls.
That's incredible. But anyways, going back to gripping, understand that everyone puts so much emphasis on what grips. Whenever I teach guillotines to people, especially at seminars, they always ask me what grip. The grip is a lot less important than the rest of the mechanics, and specifically the chin to chest action. So don't be overly fixated on the grips. There are a lot of different gripping variations you can use, but I've always found that the grip is not really that important. What's important is the ability to crunch your partner's chin to your chest. So you have a bunch of different gripping variations that you can use, and there's a lot of subtle things that are going on from situation to situation, which we're going to look at, obviously. But the grip shouldn't have nearly as much emphasis as what most people put on it, okay? So speaking about gripping, from this situation with guillotines, we have a 5-finger grip, where you just physically grab the meat of our hand with 5 of our fingers. If we're finishing low elbow guillotines, like so, we're finishing high elbow guillotines, like so, you can use a 10-finger grip across a wide range of guillotines from here, okay? You can also use, which is a lot more rare, a 10-finger grip, okay? If maybe your partner is very big, or you're in a bad position, or you don't have the dexterity to get your elbow up and over your partner's shoulder for a high elbow, we can switch into 10-finger grips. Now, this will change the orientation of your forearm, and it will take the blade of your forearm, the thin part of the forearm, off of your partner's neck, and it'll put the flat, thick part of your forearm onto your partner's neck. But if you have to, in a crisis situation, use this to either yank the hands higher and then switch back, or yank the hands up and then use a modified grip, like a 10-finger grip like this, to get up and over your partner's shoulder. I'm not going to say you can't do that. It's not wrong to do, but most of the time you won't use this. So you can use a 10-finger grip, but most of the time you're not going to. Okay, so when you have a 5-finger grip, you have a 10-finger grip where you get up and over your partner's shoulder like so. Okay, you also have modified versions of the 5-finger grip, where I go in and instead of using a pulling 5-finger, I use a pushing 5-finger, where I physically grab the meat of my hand just like I was before with my 5 fingers, but I'm pushing the grip up like so. You can use a full figure of 4 like so to go into other guillotine variations. You can use, for my high-risk guillotine, the one that I invented that everyone tells me that I didn't invent and then can't reference a single time it's been used before I said that I invented it. Or we go elbow to elbow in this position, where I physically grab my own elbow, like so, and I take my elbow down to my partner's elbow, like so, and now I grab my own elbow. So now when my partner goes to pull the elbow back, it's difficult. So you can use an elbow to elbow grip, like so, or you can use open hands, like so, which we'll speak about later. We can also use reverse gripping, like so, where, let's say, for example, my partner has good defensive hands in place, and I almost have my hands up, and I feel like my partner's pulling my hands down. I can switch to a reverse grip, and I can use that to pull my hands up higher and fight through my partner's late-stage defensive hands and get everything into place. So I can use this. Let's say my hands aren't high enough, and I feel like I just can't pull my hands up high. My partner has my wrist, for example, and she's pulling it down. I can switch to a reverse grip here, and I can use that to pull everything up high, and I can use that reverse grip to go in and finish my partner and fight through those defensive hands. So a bunch of different gripping options. Those are the gripping options, but don't put too much emphasis on the gripping. We're going to put emphasis on crunching my partner's chin to the chest, getting the hands up nice and high, and the rest of the body mechanics. And then the gripping is kind of a small piece of the puzzle that we're going to have to look at as we go on situation to situation. That's another important thing, and this isn't across the board. There are some guillotines that are just so tight that you don't need a hip-to-hip connection. But in the overwhelming majority of guillotines, you're going to need, or at least want, you're always going to want a hip-to-hip connection and some kind of control over your partner's lower body. Number one, mechanically, just to make the strangle stronger. And number two, to be able to follow your partner much easier through transitions. For example, if I just lock a regular guillotine from here, from a seated guard, when my partner goes into a rolling escape, it's much harder for me to follow my partner. She quickly rotates, she can rotate, and the grip gets all messed up, and my partner can roll defensively into positions where it's hard for me to follow her. But if at any point I can wrap my leg completely around my partner's body, like so, and now she goes to roll defensively, I can follow my partner because I'm attached to her the whole way through. We can end up in situations where we can follow our partner, keep the grip adjusted as we wanted, and get strong finishes. So anytime I can connect my hips to my partner's hips, whether it be with the best option, completely around in a closed guard or a mount, whether it be with a shin across my partner's hip and a leg over the back with a guillotine, whether it be with some kind of control over my partner's leg, like a half guard, for example, anytime that we can get some form of control over our partner's hips so we can make the strangle mechanically tighter and follow defensive movement and reactions much better, we're always going to be in a much better chance to follow our partner around and then, of course, finish the guillotines. So that hip-to-hip connection is super, super important. All right, so now let's look at the different types of guillotines that we have. So we went over gripping. Let's look at these guillotines where we would use some of this gripping. We have low elbow guillotines. Just your standard guillotine where my elbow is low and I finish without control of my partner's arm and I just have the head, and we finish a low elbow guillotine. We have high elbow guillotines where my elbow physically comes up high, up and over my partner's shoulder, and we can finish high elbow guillotines where I cover my partner's shoulder and we go in and we finish from there. We have high wrist guillotines, which puts my wrist up nice and high like it would be for a high elbow, but I overwrap my partner's arms, so it's kind of a hybrid between an arm in guillotine and a high elbow guillotine, where you basically have all the positives of the high elbow, but none of the negatives, where my partner can just reach up and over my shoulder and pull the elbow down to defend, and it gives you the same control as an arm in guillotine. All right, which we're going to look at as we progress here. We have a power guillotine, which you saw was made famous by, most people will say was made famous by Cody McKenzie, where it was up against the cage in many of the UFC fights, and Cody would push the hand up and hit power guillotines up against the fence, which is particularly why it worked, because there was a wedge behind your partner and making it hard for his opponents to rotate out of the guillotine. You also have figure four guillotines. In case of power guillotine, you have figure four guillotine, where I can physically lock in and go into almost a rear naked, but from the front. Some people call it a front naked choke. It's just called a figure four guillotine. Okay, because it's a guillotine function, but with the figure of four. Okay, and then of course we have the classic arm in guillotine, where I have an arm in I have my partner's head and arm controlled. And we go in and we like to finish with arm and guillotines. My personal favorite guillotines, the highest percentage ones that I find I can hit is arm and guillotine and my high risk guillotine. Okay, because of the fact that both of these guillotines control not only your partner's head but also your partner's arm. So you have head and arm control, which makes it much harder defensively for her to roll and to escape, because I don't have just control of the head, I have control of the head and the arm, which makes it a lot harder for my partner to circle out. For example, if I'm fighting good wrestlers and I lock guillotines from here, my partner can just grab my elbow. Now she can start circling out and she just can hit an easy elbow pass. But if I have control over my partner's elbow here, for example, and she tries to go to hit the elbow pass, she can't rotate because his arm is controlled. It makes it much harder for her to start pulling this elbow back and rotating out and moving out and away. Okay, so the highest percentage guillotines for me, which are the hardest to actually set for most people, obviously setting an arm and guillotine and having the right mechanics is harder, and setting the wrist up nice and high is harder because of the fact that you have to get the grip in deeper and you have to be able to control your partner's head and arm. So while they are a lot of times harder to get to, the reward a lot of times is much greater because of the fact that you have control of your partner's head and arm. So if you're going to look at the two highest percentage guillotines for me personally, and in the sport, I believe, they're always guillotines where you control both your partner's head and arm through either an arm and guillotine or through a high-risk guillotine. All right, so now we're going to look at, and this is just a very general idea for which guillotines to use when, okay? Because there's 6 different guillotines that we can look at using, and it kind of gets confusing on which one do I want in which position, and it's all happening very quickly. So just as a general basic rule, if you can connect your hips to your partners in some way, or you think you're going to be able to connect your hips to your partners in some way through the transition all the way up until the finish. So for example, if I can lock close guard on my partner, if I can lock half guard on my partner, if I can have a shin across my partner's hip with a leg over the back, if I think I'm going to be able to connect my hips in some way to my partner's hips, I generally prefer arm out variations, whether it be low elbow, whether it be a power guillotine, whether it be high elbow, because I don't have control over my partner's arm, so the strangle will be usually a little bit tighter and easier to set, okay? If I don't have connection to my partner's hips, for example, and I try to go for a figure 4 guillotine, okay, and let's say my partner goes to lock a figure 4 guillotine, and she's in front headlock, and she locks a figure 4 guillotine from here. While the strangle itself is very tight, because my partner doesn't have connection of her hips to my hips, things like quick rotations will allow me to start rotating inside the lock and making it hard for my partner to follow me and actually finish and enact the guillotine. If she tries to sit to a low elbow guillotine, for example, other side, from here, if there's no connection of the hips, I can start rolling and I can start hand fighting through transitions, and it will make it harder for my partner to follow me because she has less control because of the fact that she doesn't control my head and my arm. Whereas if I have a closed guard, for example, and I were to lock a figure 4 guillotine, now the control comes through my legs. So when my partner goes to roll from here, or go into a quick rotation and beat the lock, it's just not going to happen because my hips are connected to my partner's, okay? So if at any point I feel like I'm going to be able to connect my hips to my partner's hips in some way through the transition, I generally favor arm out guillotines. Okay, just very general. If I feel like my partner is going to do a great job of stopping me from connecting my hips to my partner's hips, I generally favor arm in variations, which would be an arm in guillotine or a high risk guillotine. Okay, because now with an arm in guillotine or a high risk guillotine, now if my partner goes to hit a quick rotation out, it's going to be much harder because of the fact that her arm is controlled inside of the lock. Okay, if I try to sit to an arm in guillotine, for example, and my partner goes to aggressively roll, instead of rolling, and it's hard for me to follow because of the fact that I only have control of the head, the arm will pull me with her into the roll. So if she goes to aggressively roll, I can follow my partner through because I have much more control, because I had the head and the arm rather than just the head trapped in the lock, okay? So these are very general rules, but they apply in a lot of these positions. So if you're getting confused, like, oh my God, I don't know which guillotine to use, just use this general rule where if you can connect your hips to your partners, you can use any of the guillotines, but I generally prefer to go, especially when you're starting out and you're just getting through the basics, to use arm out variations. If you feel like you're having a hard time connecting your hips to your partner's hips, then I generally use arm in variations.